What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's happening with the economic data coming out for tomorrow, what you should be watching for as a Tesla investors. We have some major headlines coming out. What's going on with the share prices of all these different tickers from Tesla to SPY, Nvidia, and many others. But before I break anything down all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner. Take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed up to 15 free stocks. And the offer ends very soon, in just a couple of weeks. Anyways, looking at Tesla, we got this very aggressive sell-off that happened for today. In my video from yesterday, in my previous videos, I mentioned that Tesla had this range. This is the tight range right here, right? I told you that if Tesla was bullish, you had to see this thing break 205 out of this resistance where we got rejected 4 times. And if we were bearish, we had to see Tesla lose 198. Once we lost this, a big drop was coming. Now, let's see, we have a quadruple top-like formation, and this also has like a head and shoulders-like structure. We had this like left shoulder here and right shoulder as well. And there are different ways you could interpret this, but basically the main thing is we had a range between 198 and 205, and Tesla ended up losing 198. We saw a big sell-off off that. We got a massive bar straight down to 192 in just within an hour. And then it just continued to sell off from there all the way down to around 186.75. And it tried to rebound a little bit, back tested to 190 before coming back down. And still looking very weak. You guys can see how it tried to rebound. It failed. It's still looking very weak. And it's not the best of news for Tesla investors. So why is Tesla selling off like this? I'll be talking about that in just a minute. It had to do with their sales in China. I went over all of this in my intraday videos. I also gave you guys a lot of updates on this, and I gave you guys a lot of warnings today. I told you all in the morning, there's a risk of Tesla selling off. As this thing was selling off, I made another video when it was like right here. I said Tesla could go all the way down to 190, if not 188. And I made another video where I broke down how low it could go. So I made a lot of videos talking about Tesla today, giving you guys warnings and warnings. And for those people who are, accusing me of saying that, it's selling off and then I'm giving you guys the warning, that's not necessarily the truth, because the truth is I gave you guys a warning yesterday about this. If you guys watched my video from yesterday, right, my video from Sunday, I said that we had some negative headlines coming out about BYD, about XPeng, about many Chinese EVs, about their sales declining. And I told you that could negatively affect Tesla, so we had a bearish catalyst. I said that yesterday. If you guys watch my video, if you look at my pre-market video, I said there was a bearish catalyst. You had all the warnings to see this move coming if you watched my videos, so you guys had the warnings. With that being said, now I just want to talk about some data. I want to talk about something else very important for Tesla, and then I'm going to break down the charts a little bit later on into this video. So what's going on with the markets? There's been a lot of talk about how the economic data coming out is still relatively strong for the market as a whole. And this is actually helping to improve some sentiment amongst analysts, as views tend to be very mixed and nuanced. Despite that, the market is still quite greedy right now overall. The market's still at these extremes, and that's very important because as we're still seeing buyers defending their positions, buyers are still present in the market. Although the market got a bit of a sell-off throughout different indices, throughout the different sections out there, there is still a lot of hope for the market to rebound later on, still holding up on nice uptrends. So I'll show you guys those trends in just a few minutes. Now, market momentum is still extremely greedy. So are different indicators out there, and they basically suggest that the market's still getting bought up. We still have an uptrend to be watching for on different indices, but we'll be watching to see if there's any changes that formed, as we are starting to see some sellers stepping in. Market volatility, the VIX is still indecisive. It's just trading around the 50 daily moving average. Not much is going on, but there is some potential for the VIX to try to push up a little bit. So we'll see if we get that. I'll be talking about that in a minute. For data, don't forget that for tomorrow, okay? Tomorrow is going to be Tuesday, March 5th, 2024. 15 minutes after the market opens, we have the S&P Global Composite PMI coming out and the S&P Global Services PMI coming out as well. So watch some volatility 15 minutes and 30 minutes after the market opens. Then at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have a lot of data coming out again. We have the Economic Optimism Report, services data coming out. Then we have the ISM Services Employment, New Orders and Prices data coming out. New orders and prices are the two most important ones because they're very forward-looking about how The economy is looking for these new orders, and it's going to give us more data for inflationary data too. So this is all important. Watch for some high volatility 15 minutes and 30 minutes after the market opens. And once all the data is out, all that's left is just a couple of Fed speakers. We have Barr giving 2 speeches, and that's going to pretty much be it. So we'll wait and see how things go. Make sure you watch all of this very carefully, and we'll see what happens as time goes on. But with that being said, now let's just talk about something else. GitLab just announced its earnings. I'm going to talk about that. And we also had NIO announcing its earnings tomorrow before the market opens. This is very, very important, especially for the EV sectors. We have Target announcing earnings as well tomorrow. So for GitLab, unfortunately, they had decent earnings overall, but their guidance was very weak. Revenue was 163 million, excuse me. Their net loss per share was 23 cents, so not bad earnings. But their fiscal 2024 highlights had a total revenue of $579 million with their operating margin at 32%. But when you go down here, you could see we had the 2025 financial outlook, which was not looking that good, looking at their loss per share and what they're expecting. So not what we typically want to see. Guidance was relatively weak, so the share price tanked, and that ended up hurting this company. Anyways, that is it for all the news about the broader markets. Let's talk about Tesla. What's happening to Tesla? Why is Tesla tumbling like this? So it tumbled 7% as shipments have slumped and new price cuts could be announced in China. This is big news for Tesla. Tesla shares dropped on new multi-week lows as slowing China shipments and new price cuts are basically hinting troubles over there. So there's been a lot of talk that Tesla had their sales dropped about 60,000 for the month of February. That's actually a 16% drop compared to the previous month and 19% drop compared to a year ago. Now, that's not that bad because other Chinese EVs saw much bigger drops, like between 30 and 60% for BYD, also for like XPeng and Li Auto and the others. But for Tesla, despite the fact that it's just a slight drop, we know Tesla has very high expectations. And there's a lot of fear being incited because of this. Why are people fearful? Because people are worried now that Tesla's Q1 deliveries are not going to be that strong. There are big demand issues in China. Tesla has to cut prices again. And there, the high interest rates and other factors like that are just continuing to affect them. There's also some talk about frugality amongst the Chinese people being a lot more frugal. So it's really, really negative for Tesla. There are some fears being emerged from this. And overall, when you look at the data compared to what we've seen in previous months, this is actually the lowest we've seen in 14 months, right? The lowest amount of factory shipments in 14 months out of China. That is not good news. I'm going to be honest with you. That's not good news whatsoever. So as a Tesla investor, I am prepared for hardships, potential downside, and even more downside. But I'm not fazed by it. I'm not scared by it because I know that this is just another buying opportunity for the long term of this company. But for now, be prepared for some more potential downside because of this. There's been a lot of talk about how Tesla has more incentives coming out, equivalents of $4.8 thousand of price cuts to customers who purchase existing inventories for the Model 3 and the Model Y by the end of March. So that's not a good piece of news as well. There could be more discounts coming for certain things being done to the Model Y. So Tesla is in a position where it's cutting prices again. The share price is dropping, shipments have tumbled, and is it solely because of Chinese New Year? Maybe, but probably not. I don't think it's solely just Chinese New Year, guys. I think that there's a lot of changes going on around the world. People, this is not like the best economy, at least globally, for people to be buying more cars in general. And there's a lot of struggles happening as we're seeing big changes that emerged from changes to monetary policy and the results of what happened during the pandemic and things like that. So this is the result. This is, Tesla's a company that's very sensitive to interest rates, and they're still affecting Tesla very, very negatively. So I want everyone to be very, very careful with data like this. The truth is, Tesla had 134 million in volume. So we're getting a lot of volume, and Tesla was selling off on that high volume. Short volume might start to go up a little bit, and the shorts may start to pounce on Tesla again. Besides that, RBC Capital still has the same rating, saying Tesla will outperform. Financial estimates are still strong for Tesla's long term. I'm still a big bull on Tesla for that reason. But do not forget that other things out there are still weakening. Price price ratio came down big time, meaning Tesla lost a lot of strength. It's very weak compared to the market. On top of this, Tuesdays tend to be green about 51% of the time, so it's like 50-50. We tend to see more volatility around 1 p.m. and also around 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then simultaneously, when it comes to the month of February, it's not the strongest of months for Tesla. Tesla had a decent February, but March tends to be stronger historically. So far, this March, Tesla's off to a very bad start. So hopefully, things do improve. But the reason why this is very different from monthly seasonality is because there are external factors affecting it from, data and things like that. So it's a little bit negative for Tesla thus far. So that being said, guys, let's talk about the charts now. Let's break down how things are looking in my honest opinion. So I'm a big Tesla bull for the long term. You guys know that I'm a big Tesla bull. But for the short term, I am very prepared for what's likely going to come, and that could be more downside. All right. And I only want to just look at what the chart tells us. I'm not a true bull. I'm not a true bear. I just like to look at what the chart tells us. I'm only a big bull on stocks like Tesla for the super, super long term. So Tesla got this aggressive sell-off. It tried to rebound a little bit, then it failed and came back down. That's a big sign of weakness. When we look at Tesla on, let me just pull this up, the 4-hour time frame is looking very weak. The daily chart of Tesla has a very bearish looking daily candlestick, and we're nearing a bearish cross in the PPO. So what typically happens is we see a little rebound when we open up, and then we might see this thing continue to sell to these lower levels, all the way down to these support zones from historical data. So there's a risk of Tesla coming down lower. It has a slight downtrend on the daily time frame, and I want everyone to be very, very careful for now. Now, with that being said, one could also interpret this as like a flag that was forming on Tesla. So basically, it was selling off right here. You guys can see it was selling off. And right here, we formed this nice little channel, and then we kind of like broke down from here. So it might turn a little bit more bearish, especially if we get a daily cross in the PPO. But we need more confirmation for this thing to remain more bearish. So watch resistance at 188, 190, and 192. Watch support around this 186.75 area. If we lose this, I think 184 is coming, which is where we have this historical zone right over here, followed by 182.5. In my opinion, Tesla's looking kind of bearish right now. It's continuing to sell off. It's very, very weak. It failed to get much of a bounce. It could rebound a little bit tomorrow, then just continue to sell off towards 184 to 182. And that would take us all the way down to this support, which is where Tesla bounced from. We might see a lot of choppy sideways price action between 182 and 188. So I do anticipate more potential downside. We could see Tesla drop a little bit more. So please be prepared for that and just be very careful. I'm a big Tesla bull long term, but for the short term, we're looking very weak. So watch for a potential sell-off that could be coming. For SPY, in my prediction from yesterday, I said SPY is either going to start a little sell-off from where we currently are. Let me actually pull up the different chart. Give me 1 second, guys. But either it's going to sell off from where we were, or it's going to pop and then drop. I said that yesterday, right? Well, what ended up happening to SPY was consolidating today, and then it kind of popped towards the end of the day. And then as we're getting ready for close, we got this big sell-off and it turned back to red. So we did pop and drop. We also lost this low here, which is a sign of weakness. So there is a risk of this selling off a little bit more. For SPY on the 4-hour time frame, just wanted to say that this is looking kind of weak right now. There is a risk of this coming down to about 510 to test our 20 EMA, and I think it might end up doing so. So I think the most likely possibility is we pop and then drop towards 510. Watch resistance at 512, 512.5, and then 513. Watch support right over here around this 511 area. If we lose that, there's 510 and 508 coming. My gut is telling me this thing will pop a little bit, then make its way down towards 510. For the QQQ, in my opinion, is looking kind of weak. This thing is starting to sell off a little bit more, and this is exactly what we predicted in my video from yesterday. We basically are coming down back below 444. So 444 is where this thing got this break from. We're starting to turn right here, especially when you look at our hourly. And if we switch over to our 4-hour, it's looking kind of weak as well. We're nearing a bearish PPO crossover. So I'm seeing this thing getting very close to 441, if not 440. And we have an imbalance all the way down to 440, which does suggest there's more downside coming. Watch resistance at 444, followed by 445 to 446. Watch support. Currently, support is going to be around 443. If we lose this, there's 442 flat, then 440 coming. In my opinion, the QQQ could sell off all the way down to 442, if not 440. So be very, very careful tomorrow. On Nvda, the same thing has been going on. Now, Nvda is actually looking a little bit stronger than what even I was predicting. Nvda has this little drop that came, but we have this imbalance here. So it does have potential to try to push a little bit tomorrow. I'll be watching 862, followed by 868 and 872. It could pop just a little bit, but if we establish a lower high relative to this high, that's when Nvidia could start turning back down towards many of these lower levels. So I'll be watching for that as well. Also, I think that it might pop a little bit, and then it may end up turning somewhere in this bar. It may not get all the way back up. There's a risk of it turning, but I first want to mention that's going to push a little bit. Might push up first, and we'll have to see where it ends up turning from. So it might push and watch and see where we get that turn. It could be around close to 870, maybe a little bit lower before it comes back down. So watch for that very carefully on Nvda. For Apple, it's looking quite interesting right now. Apple is actually looking relatively weak compared to before. We got this big little pop and drop as you predicted. It came up to this yellow trend line. So this happened during the pre-market. And then we got another sell-off as I predicted yesterday. So look for resistance at 175, support at 174, 173.5, and 172.5. This is looking kind of weak, so there is a risk of this coming down lower. So we'll see how this ends up going. But just know that Apple, in my opinion, has potential to come down to 174 and lower levels like this. So be very, very careful. I do believe it's going to try to base very, very soon around these areas. It might drop a little bit more, but then we might see some sideways price action very close to 173.5. So I think it kind of pops and drops to 174 and then trades sideways in this range. And we'll be watching it very carefully from there. Anyways, guys, that is it for the main 5 I typically go over. Now I just want to focus on a very quick analysis of other charts out there. So Rivian, right? I said yesterday Rivian might see some downside, and that's exactly what ended up happening. We're looking pretty weak on Rivian. I say this because when you look at the chart, we're nearing a bearish PPO crossover, and I could see this coming down towards 10.5 again and continuing to sink closer to 10. So it looks kind of bearish to me. For SoFi is looking a little bit weak right now. It could continue to sink towards 8.36. So it looks kind of bearish in my opinion. ARM looking kind of bearish. I could see 134 being tested. It might pop towards 139 and then come down to 134.42. Looks a little bit bearish. Supermicro, we said this thing might pop more. Exactly as predicted. It popped even more. I was expecting a push towards 1100, went a little bit higher towards 1155, but now it's starting to reject. So watch support right here. It's barely above its support at 1054. If we lose that, I think 1000 is coming, followed by 955. If we lose 1000, 955 is coming. If we bounce off 1000, we could push higher, but it looks like it's going to test 1000, if not a lower level very soon. Palantir is looking a little bit weak. If we end up losing support right here, just under 24, I could see this thing coming down towards 22.8, so watch for that very carefully. For the Russell 2000, in my opinion, may sink towards 204.65. If we lose this, then 202 is coming, but I think it's going to test 204. Watch 204 on the IWM. If we lose this, 202 is coming in my honest opinion. For, Microsoft, in my opinion, is very interesting. So when you zoom out, right, we have a possible inverse head and shoulders. So we have a left shoulder here, the head, and then the right shoulder. But the thing is, even though it has an inverse head and shoulders, the right shoulder might not just lead it to just pushing all the way up to like 420. It might actually form kind of like a cup and handle, even decline a little bit and slowly uptrend towards that level. So for the medium term, it could push to 420. But for the short term, there might be a little decline coming to it. And we could see 412, if not 410 coming. So I do see a little decline coming. I think 412 is a real possibility, if not 410. Then we'll see what happens after that. So I see a little decline on Microsoft, so be very careful on that. For AMD looks like it's turning just a little bit. If we lose 205, we could be sinking towards 200, if not 195. There might be a little sell-off right here before it tries to bounce, but it's still holding up nicely. So don't worry about 195 yet. Let's see 200 first. If we lose 200, then 195 is coming. I think it's going to test 200, though. I think 200 might be tested, then might try to rebound. But there's a risk of it coming down just slightly. For the VIX is starting to look a little bullish on the 4-hour. We got a little bounce off 13. It could get close to 13.74, which suggests that the market might come down a little bit, which helps this thing launch a little higher. For the dollar index, the dollar is looking, it's going to be trying to test 103.82. That's our 200 EMA on the 4-hour time frame. If we bounce off this, 103.92 could be coming, so we'll see how it goes. For Coinbase, we're bullish. Coinbase is very bullish right now. We're going to be looking for 240's resistance. If we break that, then 250 is next. So overall, I do believe that there's potential for Coinbase to push higher, so watch for that carefully. For Google, in my opinion, is continuing to sell off a little bit. Watch resistance at 135. If we retest this and we break past this, we could actually push for 136.5. If it rejects off 135, a bigger drop is coming, but overall it's looking a little bit more bearish to me. So I think it's going to pop a little bit, retest either 135 or 136.5, and then reject and make its way down towards 132 again, and then sink even lower. So look for a little pop and drop and expect this thing to get close to about 130. It still looks kind of weak right now. Amazon, exactly as predicted, it popped and dropped, right? I think Amazon is going to be testing 176. If we bounce off this, it could push higher, but if we lose 176, 174 is coming. My guts tells me it's going to be sinking lower towards 174. I also want to call out that on the daily time frame, the daily is showing a potential rejection, and we have this gap to fill over here. So I could see this thing declining towards 174. It looks a little bit more bearish to me. For Meta, Meta is looking a bit more bearish because we hit 505, grabbed liquidity, and turned around. We're getting a bearish cross in the PPO, and it's going to test 494 most likely. I do see 494 coming. If we lose that, I'm going to be looking for 491. So there's a risk of Meta kind of sinking a little bit more. So watch for that very, very carefully. Anyways, guys, that is it for the video. I don't want this video to be too long. I am not saying the market is crashing. I'm not in favor of a massive crash right now. I'm simply saying that some stocks look like they're going to pull back a little bit. But I'm not saying that for everything because stocks like NEO depend on their earnings. Nvda is still looking relatively strong. So we'll see how it goes. So for Tesla and other stocks out there, watch support. Be very careful. I'm still a huge Tesla bull for the long term. That's never going to change, at least for now. And then we'll see what happens, at least moving forward for the short term, because Tesla does have some bearish potential. With that being said, have a great day. Do what you have to do, guys. And I'll see you guys very soon tomorrow morning for the next pre-market update video. Thank you and peace out.